Alright, time for another draft science video presentation. Yes. So a draft video, a proposal. Had a word for it a moment ago and already lost it. But anyway, um, on magnetism. So the simple answer. So it's a little complicated, magnetism, because there's a subtle difference between magnetism and charge, in the sense that it's both things are being controlled by electrons and protons, and the fact that they have these opposite properties. And in the case of, in a lot of cases, there'll be this huge connection between what something's doing electrically, that is, what it's doing in terms of having what we call electricity happening, and this byproduct of magnetism. And magnetism will also induce electricity by affecting atoms, even when those atoms aren't explicitly or obviously magnetic. Like I'm trying to think of a conductor that like salt water or something. It's probably a bad example, actually, because I haven't seen them do the experiment where they make salt water magnetic. So anyway, so it just really has to do with inducing, between electricity and magnetism, the distinction. So the argument I'll make is that magnetism is, again, it's a pattern thing. It's like the difference between gravity and visible photons. Gravity, the photons don't have the pattern, and in the case of photons, there's a pattern to the gravity. That is, the little tiny bits of a force are at a specific frequency, and that causes an effect. And the same thing's happening with magnetism, where you're taking something that already exists and giving it a pattern, and the pattern is recognizable by other things that have a pattern detector, so to speak, or likewise patterned. So in theory, I guess the first thing to say is it's like you have a bar magnet, a regular magnet. You look at it and you say, okay, it's doing something. It's making stuff happen. So I put a little north side magnet over here, and it pushes it away. And then I have the south side over here, and it pushes it towards. And this doesn't seem, this movement, this activity of something happening. This is what's happening the other way. All seems like free energy in a way, like what's causing the effect. And what are you going to say, bent space? Conventional physics has no answer, no way to account for it. It thinks, in a sense, it'll draw pictures, and tell you this is what a magnet's doing. It'll talk about lines of force that are swirling around, so it's like Ken Wheeler-esque. They think a bunch of stuff is moving, and there's tornadoes and vortices and swirly bits and all kinds of activity happening. And yeah, there is some activity, but the activity is like everything else in the universe. There's a state of equilibrium that everything has to come to with the universe. That is, right now the universe is bombarding you with energy. You're just sitting here, and the fact is like a magnet, okay? You compared to the magnet. The universe is hitting you constantly with energy. Little bits of force, stuff moving the speed of light, is constantly hitting you and constantly hitting the magnet. And the simple argument would be is that you have to radiate it back. And if you radiate it back, okay, with a pattern, all right, then you have a photon, a pattern of phase, of period between events. So if you throw it back in a timed fashion, you're getting hit by random bullets, and you're going to send the bullets back as a reflection. Some pieces of you are going to send them back with a pattern. And what's happening with the magnet is the same thing. The energy coming in is just going to get reflected eventually. It all has to be reflected. All right, except for the part used up. The used up part is gravity, by the way. But anyway, and so the magnet is just a radiator, okay, like you. It's just going to reflect the universe, and it doesn't make photons, visible photons. And instead, what it's going to reflect, what it's going to take in energy, cell phone radiation, all kinds of radiation going in, gravity going in. And what it's going to do is somehow now the stuff coming back out will have a pattern to it because the magnet is doing something. It has a specific shape or form, and it's going to cause an effect similar to this photon. In a sense, it's going to cause a pattern in space of that force that's going to be something else could see. Something could see that the force is, has a pattern to it. All right. So if I made these red and blue lines, you can understand that if I reflected the thing back, I only sent red back on certain lines and I only sent blue back on certain other lines, you could understand that that pattern could be seen by something else that could detect red and blue. So that's what a magnet's doing. So we're really just talking now about two patterns that have to match. That is, like in charge, okay, there has to be, now, you can know charge exists without me telling you charge exists. We all, can agree on that one maybe. But conventional physics doesn't have any good explanation beyond recognizing what could sort of be an obvious statement that the things that if I want to make an object that's negative, I can have something called an electron and a proton. But if I want to make an object that has a charge, what I want to do is, I'm going to have too many electrons on one side and too few on the other side, right? And that's really going to be the definition of a plus, because now the protons are stronger, and this will be a minus because now the electrons are stronger. So this is going to look very blue, and this is going to look very red. If you were to use those colors to decide it. And that would be how charge would work. And obviously on one object I could put, I can charge the entire surface with too many electrons and cause the whole object to have a negative charge or a positive charge. So it's really the electrons, and instead of making an overt pattern of blue and red, a pattern where the blue and the red have a pattern, it's just sending more blue, more of these kind of lines and very few lines like that. And, likewise on the other side, it's the exact inverse, more of this and very little of that. So it's basically, that's the connection between the thing. They're all going to use what I would argue is red, okay, and blue. In this example anyway. I usually use red for this. Okay, the protons are usually red. But anyway, and the idea is that the proton reacts to the two forces in two inverse ways. So there's red force and blue force. I could just say that's red and this is blue, and there's red and blue objects, so to speak. And all you need to do is to say, well, when the red hits the red force hits the red object, there's a high likelihood of a reflection, and the object is going to move. And when the blue thing hits the red thing, there's a high likelihood it's not going to move. It's not going to be given momentum, and it's just going to change the direction of the blue. Now I'm changing this to, it doesn't just change the direction, it actually changes its color. So blue force gets converted into red force when it goes through an electron, and red force gets converted into blue force when it goes through a proton. And that change to the simulation might be just what I need to make it work better and convince you, because the simulation will make it so obvious that it works. But anyway, we'll get to that eventually. All right. So so that's the idea, is that all this is really about a conversation about all the different forces and all the different manifestations of what we call this stuff moving at the speed of light, the spectrum. Is really that some of the spectrum comes with features, okay, like frequency or a pattern, okay, and that changes the meaning of the force. The force can do something different because of the pattern built into it. it'll cause different causes and effects. Yeah, but there's really just this simple idea that all the universe is really made out of is electrons and protons. These are the matter bits. Okay. And the rest of it is just the force bits, which are going the speed of light. That's their distinction. The matter bits have no momentum on their own. They have to be pushed by force. They go where the forces tell them to go. We go where gravity tells us to go. Gravity's force bits. We go where the wind blows, so to speak. We don't get to decide where we go. And, you know, all the energy in the universe is in the force bits. Nothing has energy until the force bits gives it to them, shares it with them, actually. I mean, the force bit actually sticks and has to actually push, you know, electrons and protons around. But this stuff is going the speed of light, the speed of the speed of force, speed of force. And that's the distinction, though. So you just have two distinctively different elements, and you could just, you know, for the sake of making it easier, just say these are the red bits, these are the blue bits, and then you have two different interactions where you have the interaction where you push the object and then reflect, and the interaction where the object, the force bit, is just diverted and it is, you know, goes from man to woman, you know, changes switches sides, goes from red to blue, flips, does some little thing, okay, that changes its view of the universe, its effect on the universe. All right, so what has occurred to me, I've made arguments before about how electricity going through a wire has to be doing something, and I argued that it's basically changing the shape of atoms. So when the electricity is actually moving through, what it's really doing is taking a shape change and sharing it, all right, and then that one shares it and that one shares it. It's just changing the shape of the atoms. By changing their shape, you polarize them. By squishing an atom, okay, with electrons in it, you basically force it to become polarized, in the sense that from certain points of view, from this point of view and this point of view, the electrons are closer to you. It's a practical fact. They've now become closer to you, which means that they are less potent in blocking the proton. So you'll see more, no, the other way around. And so you see more of the proton when they're close, and you see less of the proton when they're far away. The closer they are to you, the less of the proton you see, so the less positive they become. And the more negative you see, because you're seeing the electron. It's like the moon. If you're standing on Saturn and the moon's between you and the Earth, and I just keep moving the moon around, it'll block more and less of the Earth from your point of view. And that's really all we're talking about, is the viewpoint, okay? And so this would happen in 360 degrees, obviously, you know, this squishing. You know, it's like squishing a disc. You go from a circle to, you know, a flat, you know, the flat thing. You go from a spherical, you know, round, three-dimensional circle to a flatter thing. But anyway, so that would explain why it's covers all degrees. It's because from all degrees there's going to be that perspective. But anyway, I don't want to get into that kind of detail. So that was the point, is this, that there's the transmission of electricity is just a transmission of a change in the shape of atoms, because you're adding or subtracting electron pressure. You're pushing electrons closer to each other. It causes the atoms to have to absorb that difference. The electrons repel each other, then they push away, and they go where there's no force repelling. They obviously don't move into the pressure, they evade the pressure, they evade the wind. Okay, so the simple observation, okay, I had that, my old diagram of a magnet was that clearly what I was arguing is that mixed force comes in, okay, I don't know how exactly to draw the two kinds of force. I guess I could just use a squiggle. So you have electron and proton force comes in, and you know, only electron force comes out one end, you know, and only proton force comes out the other end. So it's just a filter. The universe comes in, it reflects the universe, okay, it segregates. So it's red and blue, coming in, and it's red and blue going out. Okay, segregating the forces. And that theory doesn't work in the sense that we know this is both created by electrons and protons. So electrons and protons are both the electric monopoles and the magnetic monopoles. They are the source of the phenomenon. And the fact is that I could put a charged object here. So I have a north-facing magnet, and I could put an object that has a charge on it, that is lots of electrons. And in theory, if this is producing red force, the electron force, then these two things should repel each other pretty strongly. The magnet should repel the charged object, but it doesn't. So it can't be that simple. It can't be as simple as the magnet is making a perfect segregation. So what the magnet is doing, this gets into some complex elements that you have to always put into the story. You're doing a detective thing. Detectives have to collect evidence, and so you're collecting all these little bits, little feathers, little stuff that doesn't look like it means anything, little drip, little that, little this. So one of the observations you always have to include when you're doing your thinking is to remember that, you have these different metals. The iron will easily magnetize. Just no work at all. All you do is put a field near it, it turns into a duplicate magnet in exactly the opposite configuration. So it will configure exactly opposite to the magnet you're exposing it to, and it'll be a strong magnet. And then you have all these other metals like copper, nickel, blah blah blah, all these other stuff that won't do the same thing, but they will create a small minor magnetic field, in the sense that part of them will create a repulsive field. So if you expose them to north-south, they'll create, instead of iron, which will do south-north, they'll do north-south. They will reflect. They will become a mirror to that magnetic field. Now, not a real strong one, but it's a mirror. And it's going to force some energy back. Alright. And that, we know in iron, that's controlled by little domains inside. Little patches, little crystals. The crystals are a key part of both photon creation and magnetism. And the fact is these domains have an attitude. That's one part of their structure, and then the domains can align. So you have an issue of the domain has a certain alignment, okay, that can be in any direction. And there can be chaos in the domain. That is, some elements are going this way, some elements are going that way, so the domain can have a sloppiness to it. But the real key is to know is that the domain is basically a structure, and it has a decided pattern. I should make this whole thing bigger. Sorry about that, because the light's rather poor. But, the story is the story. Words almost suffice. Alright, so the domain has a pattern, or an alignment. And what you're really doing is just saying that you're taking all these little crystals inside of here, and they can actually hear them, adjust. And what you're really doing is saying you're going to take those crystals that I don't think you can make the actual crystals move, but what you're making them do is all this stuff inside the crystals start aligning. So a crystal that was aligned this way aligns this way, and another one lines that way, and they all line up in the same direction, magnifying whatever this is, this magnetic effect. So the more domains you alter to have the right orientation, the more magnetism you have. Okay, the more percentage of the metal is causing the magnetic effect. Right. And that's also a feature, is that you can only make so much magnetism in, say, a piece of iron. You can't make an infinite amount of magnetism. But anyway. Alright, so electricity causes the effect in the sense that electricity changes the shape of those domains. It forces the alignment to be a specific way. Now, we also know about electricity that voltage doesn't really do anything, okay, because voltage means your electricity will go through the wire and basically, some sort of small number of atoms be affected. So if I use a high voltage, 1000 volts, a very small number of atoms will be changed a very small number of atoms will be doing the exchanging. So instead of exchanging like from, this to this, instead of a shape change that would be rather dramatic, minor, the shape change will be very dramatic with high voltage. So high voltage just means that you're conveying more electron pressure per atom. And then, but if you want to make a magnet out of the conductor, then you put in a low voltage, okay, because the low voltage at a high amperage, a lot of watts, a lot of energy, means there's lots of these pathways. And that means you're turning lots of atoms into magnets. You're making lots of atoms line up magnetically the same way. So that's the explanation for why you use low voltages to create magnetism. Because you have to affect the most number, you want to affect a lot of atoms to create the effect. And I could even get into, the shape of the electricity in the conductor, but I don't know if we need to do that, because we'll just get to the observation I had. Okay, so the key to the whole thing is just a simple change in perspective. So I keep arguing that this is, so much of this, it just has to do with, what you're seeing from a specific location, and what something appears to be. And all I do is make a subtle change, and I see something completely different. So if this was the proton, and this was the arrangement of the electrons on a square, for example, it can be any geometry. I just changed, so this is, you could see that the proton is clear. There's no electrons in front of it. So the proton is very visible to this eye, and the electrons are just, they're visible, but they're peripheral. Okay, so they're further away, distance-wise, and, they're much smaller, so blah, blah, blah. And then if I just tilt that, if I just turn that square, 45 degrees, I create a completely different object in a sense. Now the electron is blocking the proton, okay, and the electrons are, the other electrons, this electron is certainly going to be effective, and it's going to block the proton, and you can just sort of get the idea that if I'm going to look at these two objects, I just switch them from one thing to the other thing, that this could easily be understood. Just this simple change in the geometry of how the atoms are connected. I just changed that geometry, and I changed the what you're going to see. It's going to look like something different. One thing's going to be clearly a positive, and one thing's going to be a negative. One thing will show me more. I'll see more. It'll be a blue-purple, and the other thing is going to be a red-purple, violet. That idea of mixing the two colors. Yeah, it won't be all red, and it won't be all blue, but one's going to be decidedly more than the other. And you could argue that this would just end up representing also a kind of a bullseye appearance, right? Where the middle is going to be red, and the outside going to be blue, okay? And this one would be, the middle is going to be, why didn't I put the extra? Blue in the middle, okay, and red on the outside. So you can understand that what's really being, what the magnets are really seeing, is little bullseyes. And if you're a blue-red, if you're looking at something that has blue, red is the bullseye, then it's going to be attractive because you're attracted to, your electron in the middle is going to attract to the proton middle of the other object, and vice versa. You'll have a pattern match. So your bullseyes will match, in terms of being opposites, and you'll attract. And if you're looking at something that has the same bullseyes as you have, that is the same foci, the same centers are poking, the same color, they're shooting force, and they're pushing against each other and reflecting, they're aligning, then it's going to be repulsive. So this is really what you could argue is that it's just about how the atoms connect to each other. And obviously they do connect based on, sharing an electron. So you're just talking about which electron the atoms are sharing, and that changes whether they align, creating a a pattern that is, in which direction the pattern is in will be dependent on the alignment. So you could argue that the difference between the north and south side of the magnet is that the north side has its alignment this way and the south side has its alignment this way. In terms of the view it gives the world, it's just a different 45-degree change in the alignment. Probably better to say this just for clarity. This might be closer to the truth. It's just a 45 degrees. Anytime they're 45 degrees out of alignment, they're going to look to something looking at them, okay, decidedly different. Bullseyes, red here, blue here, So that's all you have to do is have that 45-degree angle change in how the atoms are connected to each other. Electrons sharing this electron, sharing the electron, and all of that creates an alignment depending on which electron they're sharing. If they share one electron, there's an electron here. If they're sharing a different electron, there's no electron here, right? And this one, so you could say that when they all line up, then they're going to be magnetic when they all share the same electron. And when they're sharing a different electron, they're all going to have the, the absence of an electron from your point of view of the atom. So it's just about seeing the atom as, these two different ways you could see the atom is, where there's electron here and electron here, and another way of seeing the atom is the electrons here, and then the other ones are over there. And so you can get the idea that I was supposed to make the two different. So one, there's no electron in front of the proton from one point of view. From the other point of view, there's an electron in front of the proton. That's the difference. That makes all the difference. And so it just depends on which side you're viewing from. One side will see the extra electron in front of the proton, the other side won't. And so it's just about the domains lining up to provide that image to the world of being inversely lined up. Yeah, well, that's probably a good enough way to say it, but obviously there's lots of details regarding the domains, and I guess the way you how you have obviously I can look at the magnet from any side, and it's going to, this is the north end, so it's north end from every surface, but that's sort of the argument. It's always about the surface. So all of this stuff radiates, from the material, kind of this way. They're all little planes of material, going through the object, through the object, through the object. And that way, it'll look the same from every perspective. Right. So yeah, so you'll have the same edge. I'm just saying, say if this is the shape and this is going to be the side that looks like no electrons in front of protons over here, and yes, electrons in front of protons over here. I'm just saying, if you understand that it's coming from the center out, then you can understand that I was using this as a shape. So I'm just saying, if you take this shape out, all right, then just as one piece, then you could understand that all of the outside edges, all of these edges are, this is a, electron, no electron. So they're all the same, and you're just turning them at different angles, and so that from every angle, from all of them, we'll end up putting, no electron, no electron, no electron in all of the arrangements that are possible. So the whole thing will end up looking like a north magnet from that side because of how they're arranged, because how the crystals are arranged. All right, but again, that there's lots of subtleties. I'm just saying the idea of understanding that, like a photon, is just dependent on this idea of what's the frequency, what's the distance between these hits, and then that the idea is that you're going to hit a structure, a piece of metal, or any subject. You're going to hit it, and then you're going to hit it again at a certain distance here, based on the polarization, and so it'd be a certain distance away. Okay, and you're going to hit it at a different time. So the energy starts here, it starts moving this way. By the time it gets here, you hit it again, and then you hit it again. And you could argue that simple process could explain why there's such a dependency on frequency, and why certain atoms, certain materials will reflect light and others will absorb the light, because some of them will actually not create the photoelectric effect because it's the wrong frequency. That is, you won't get, this little line, this thing here will hit here instead of here, and by doing that, it hit, it didn't hit it, behind the energy, and therefore it didn't add energy. It hit too soon. The thing hadn't slowed down enough. It hadn't gone. It's just all dependent on the speed of the stuff, the electrons in the material, and their speed is going to be something less than the speed of light. And but it's always going to be fairly consistent for each substance. So each substance is going to move a certain speed, and that's why it's completely dependent on the timing of the event. And so this isn't so much about timing, it's just about how the atoms are lined up, the geometry, how they connect to each other, and what electron they share, and what exposure you have to them when they're all attached to each other, that can all be the same view. And so that's probably enough. Anyway, I just wanted to emphasize, this is the key part. It's just the difference between looking at a square and looking at a square the wrong way. A diamond, right? A diamond looks different than a square. Same thing. You're just looking at a different perspective, and the different perspective makes all the difference. So something this simple could be responsible for the difference between north and south. No energy required. The energy comes from the external world, so magnetism doesn't do anything but change the shape of the atoms, and by changing the shape of the atoms, you change how they reflect the universe. That's it. Just like you could theoretically think about how, all I do is change my surface atoms, turn them into reptile skin, and I look entirely different. I change what I'm reflecting to the world. Just a subtle change in the orientation of the atoms changes what gets reflected and how it reflects. What gets absorbed and eventually reflected is also part of it, of course. All right. So, we'll call that a preliminary, draft explanation. And take a pause, and I'll do some comments and call it a day. Alright, whatever comments. I don't even think I'll bother with the rude comments that I copied, deleted. They're starting to harass now anyone who comments on my videos positively. You have to go research that person and find ways to embarrass or make false accusations about them. They really just don't care. It's really disgusting. And the accusations they are capable of making that are false are really damaging to somebody's character. It's an overt slander. It's against the law. They're breaking the law. It's just a fact. Prosecuting them is really expensive, but it's a fact that they are breaking the law. And they just don't care. And this is how they want to win, is to harass people, to violate them, to, break the windows of their house, firebomb, burning crosses in their lawn. It's just extortion. You know, they try to drive you off the internet by harassing you in these personal ways, and these assholes like Stephen Bro make best friends out of characters like this. It's disgusting. It's really disgusting that these people get away with this shit. But anyway, I mean, to start harassing people for making comments on a video is just so disgusting. Ugh. But anyway, so I deleted that crap. It's just there's no proof either. You know, it's just so disgusting. They make these accusations. They don't link to any evidence for any of this crap, right? They say I violated this, I did that. They have no links to any evidence of any of these crimes. None. Because they didn't take place. They're just lies. Overt fucking lies. Ugh. Anyway, to this asshole. Sorry, Luke, you're an asshole. What optics experiments have you replicated yourself? None of these conversations need any yourself bullshit. You're just duplicitous hypocrites. Okay, I'm asking you, why do you believe them? Let's just say the mob, the millions of people who believe in bent space and kinetic energy and all that crap. Let's just say it was one person. So it's me against them as an argument. What evidence have they showed you for MV squared? What physical experimental evidence have they showed you that it actually happens in the universe? They have zero evidence. Zero physical evidence. I've given you lots of reasons why it's impossible because it creates free energy. I've given you reason to understand that a spaceship couldn't possibly navigate space with MV squared because it wouldn't go the right places, it wouldn't burn its engines the right amount of time, it wouldn't land on the moon. It's a fact. And NASA was pretty clear in saying it's only using Newtonian physics to get to the moon. It didn't use anything else. It didn't use Leibniz physics. So anyway. But the fact is, I have done some experiments. Or I made an interferometer on my porch. I did slit experiments. The fact is, it's not about seeing the experiment, because you can do that. You can research it and look it up, and you can see the experiment being done. The point here is to explain why the results are what they are. And what I've pointed out to you is that when you analyze their explanation, it's obvious they never even did it. They've never compared their mathematical answers to an actual physical experiment because there's no possible way the two match. As I just showed in a video, this is so obnoxious in a way, right? Because I just showed it in a recent video. I mean, this is one of the older Huygens videos. But, I mean, you know, I showed the guy doing 15 minutes of math, and then he demonstrates the pattern, and the pattern doesn't look anything like the math just predicted. Nothing at all like it. Alright. Maybe you'd like the flat earth folk. They too start with intuitive answers without having to worry about any pesky maths or experimental results. And I'm asking you, Luke, you weak-minded little silly person, provide your links. Who do you think has the right answer? Show me the video with the right answer. Show me the kinetic energy explanation where they prove its existence. Show me, shit for brain. Show me their convoluted math, and I'll show how it's exactly that it has nothing to do with Newton. Newton never said F equals ma. Newton said change in momentum over change in time. And change in time doesn't mean anything in the sense that that's just units. That's just telling you how much force per second. So if you want to know the total force, then the units turn into 1. And you have basically force equals momentum. Fact. Are you going to argue that specific fact? No. You're just going to keep saying this kind of horse shit. You're the flat earther. You're the science denier. You're the one who doesn't care about the scientific method. Where did they repeat the Eddington experiment? Never. Where did they prove bent space? Never. I mean, you're pathetic. You don't require evidence. And yes, you do require math, but as I've pointed out, as I've shown pretty dramatically, their math is nonsense. They say, okay, that Newton's formula equals their crazy formula. They say that, okay, force equals mass times, change in the mass times your velocity, mv. Force equals mv. It's pretty much Newton's equation. They say this, okay, this mv, change in mv, means 1/2 mv squared. There's no rational way to say this is the simpler form of this. This is as simple as you can get. You can't get any simpler than this. Force equals energy equals momentum. Period. And it's true all the time. It was true back when Newton said it, and it's true now. Obviously, Newton didn't have the word energy. It's the only difference. But really, fuck you. Okay? Try again, Luke. You suck. Yeah, right. You're the flat earther. Flat evidence, non-existent evidence. Again, go ahead. Show how when you do the single impediment math, the math for two surfaces, a single obstacle, one variable, the thickness of the impediment, how that describes the two-slit experiment mathematically. Go ahead, explain it to me, how it predicts the envelope pattern, shows everything, explains everything. Gets completely correct answers. Show me. Okay, but you can't show me because you haven't done the experiment and no one else has either, because obviously it doesn't work. Alright, kinetic energy, kinetic energy. Well, that's just cute. It is both, it is a unit of measurement. So you're just so full of shit. It's obviously not a unit of measurement. It's made of things you measure, mass and velocity. It itself is not a unit of measure. Mass is a unit of measure. Velocity is a unit of measure. This is a crazy theory that somehow these extra little numbers they attach to it are somehow going to show you the truth of it. When no, it doesn't have anything to do with the actual way it works. Gasoline has no kinetic energy. So these, the use of the word of kinetic energy when what we're really talking about is kinetic energy, not in the context of potential energy and kinetic energy. We're talking about it in the context of the kinetic energy formula. Because it has no motion. Yes, I know the molecules are vibrating. Yeah, well, it's kind of important because they obviously have stored in them more vibrational energy. That's why the gasoline can do more than the water can do, is because there happens to be actually more pressure inside the atoms of gasoline. So when they say it has no kinetic energy, I mean it has no net direction. I mean it has no net direction. It's okay to say that, but it really doesn't have anything to do with getting to the point, which is this idea of the kinetic energy theory. All right, the formula. We could quite literally square it 100 times and it wouldn't affect our daily life in the slightest. So that doesn't make any sense. You know, if it makes more joules of energy, we know what joules of energy can do. They can push things hundreds of miles different. So of course it would make a difference, you idiot. I don't even, this is too stupid. It's almost like, why read it? Well, apart from people not remembering to square it by 100, here is an analogy. There won't be any reasonable analogy here. There are two objects. One moves twice as fast as the other, and they both hit two different objects at rest at the same time. Kinetic energy is maintained. Twice as fast as the other. I don't know how, if it's going twice as fast as the other, how is kinetic energy maintained? Because now the object will move in a direction. I don't fully understand this yet. Well, then why are you commenting? It's not very helpful. It's just more noise making, since I've only been thinking about it for a few hours now. So you really are just a jackass, right? I mean, that just sounds really stupid and ignorant of you. Like we all need to hear each other's farts. No, wait till you have the symphony written. Wait till you have a song, not just la la la, la 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 la. No, we really not. We don't need a bunch of la-las. It's not helpful. So either ask a question or assert something with some sort of authority that you have thought about for more than 4 fucking hours, asshole. I mean, that's just really offensive. I haven't thought about it. I'm just talking shit. Dude, I'm just gonna waste some of your time reading my stupid inane mush. Fuck you. I mean, that's just rude. Alright, same asshole. If the Earth absorbed energy, well, as I just pointed out, it really doesn't absorb it permanently. It only borrows energy. It has to give it back. So that the core is molten. So again, it's absorbing it's just like you absorbed my time. You just wasted some of my time on your previous comment. I can never get this wasted time back. It's gone. It's a loss of my productivity throughout my entire existence. You've damaged my productivity. The same thing happens to a force when it hits matter. When a force hits matter, the force isn't going to get where it would have gone if it didn't waste time pushing the matter. If it's not pushing matter, it's going the speed of light, right? It's not going the speed of light while it's pushing the matter. So it's slowed down, and that means everything it does in the future, it does later than it would have if it didn't waste time on the asshole. That's what keeps matter moving. Electrons and protons can't move unless they're pushed. They're the things absorbing it. The byproduct of that is likely atomic motion, which also causes what we see as heat. Then all the planets in the solar system should have the same energy. Why would they have the same energy? If they have to have different masses. If your mass is higher, you have more pressure, more crushing energy from the gravity, more heat. So it would be silly to say they'd all be the same temperature. No, they wouldn't. And only change with respect to distance from the sun. So again, the sun isn't the only source of energy, is the point. The gravity is also energy, okay, and it's not inconsequential. And the whole reason why the sun is on fire is because of gravity. Gravity's pushing, okay, on the atoms at the core of the sun and creating insanely high temperatures. This is not the case, says you. Therefore, heat of the earth mostly is caused by energy already stored in it. And how does it stay in it forever? I mean, do you think the earth is that good an insulator? You know, the rocks that make up the earth, they're somehow, you know, in a vacuum jar of some kind and the energy can't get out? That just doesn't make much sense, fella. In addition, the earth is gradually cooling. Well, says you, therefore temperature is not maintained. Says you again. So these are just undocumented claims. You're just doing mushy thinking, in my opinion, and you're just wasting my fucking time. So do it some more and I'll block you. Alright, the infamy guy who's just a piece of shit, just keeps ragging on about the same crap. It was kind of clear in what was proven in the videos and demonstrated in the videos. You just don't care about those arguments. I demonstrated their math doesn't actually work. Their analogies to water and sound are absolute nonsense because the patterns are not anything alike. The single slit is not the double slit experiment, but the single slit certainly does the same thing the double slit experiment's doing. I mean, all these arguments I've made, you've ignored. I was hoping for some parameters. I gave them. I pointed out that, you know, I can even remember the numbers. I gave the numbers for the experiment. So he's just like pretending that, oh, what do you mean? No, I gave the actual numbers, all right? The slit width, the distance of the openings, okay, was 0.04. The distance of the impediment in the middle, okay, changed, okay, from 1/2 a millimeter to 1/4 a millimeter. All right, 0.25 and 0.5. So he did the two sizes. I gave the number, shithead, and I just guessed that the wavelength of the green light, I just made it 400 because actually it makes this happen. You know, they're the same 4, so it ends up being 100 for the envelope. So it makes a nice, and then you can just see 8 to 1, because when I get the 856 number, you could say, oh, okay, it's 8 to 1. You know, and the 1400 number was right on, you know, for the 0.5. So 14 to 1. 14 little bars, exactly what it was. 14 little bars per node. Okay, so the center had 28, you know, and this one had 14, exactly as my math would predict. But their math, no hope. Completely wrong. So I did all this in a video, and he just, what is this crap? Like mass, speed, direction of the light. We don't need the speed of the light, right? We know what the speed of light is. The mass of photons. Again, this just depends on a theory where you're going to start compiling all this. Like how much energy does it actually take? How much energy is there in gravity? All of that in some ways is a reflection of things like the gravitational constant. So those constants are already telling you the mass of the energy. You just have to figure out how many energy bits add up to that amount of effect. But whatever, this is all stuff you don't need to understand. I just showed you a two-slit video where they're not getting the right answer, and they're just lying that they are. It's a complete bullshit. It's a complete sham. It's a lie. Okay. Right in your face lie by people with doctor in front of their names. Okay, and you're just sitting here doing this horse shit instead of saying, oh, that's outrageous. How do they get away with that crap? Why don't any physicist apply any scrutiny to the horse shit anywhere? Why do they keep allowing them to say things that aren't true? As well as the demonstrations of the enclosure it travels through in your example. So what the fuck are you even talking about? The enclosure it travels through in your... There's no such thing. So I'm just going to have to block him. This is just so irrational. Maybe you're saying those numbers aren't attainable. I gave numbers for whatever I was talking about. Fuck you. This is just such a lie. That somehow you need my numbers. They haven't provided any evidence. Where's their numbers showing? Okay, the collection of any of this kinetic energy. Where's their experiment? Where's their numbers? Where has Einstein given you actual numbers, okay, for this bending of the space? He hasn't given you any numbers. All right. Is time not needed at all in your equation? So again, the equation, you clearly, every time you identify a velocity, you have time in it already. Mass times velocity has time in it, shit for brain. Velocity is made out of time. It's in the units of time. How do you derive velocity without time? You measure velocity, idiot. You don't do you can't use the equation unless you've already ascertained the velocity. The equation doesn't tell you its velocity. You use the equation with velocity in it to obtain a number for energy. Velocity is one of the variables you have to put into the equation, shithead. Have you Googled the reason why kinetic energy has a square and a half in it? So I'm not going to, this is just a waste of time. Of course, I have watched all the kinetic energy videos I could find on the fucking internet. I've been pleading for somebody to show me the correct video. The video that's just so outstanding, it completely gets the answers right. The one that doesn't say ludicrous crap like, well, we conserved 100% of the momentum, that is all of the MV went from this to this, and yet we lost half of the energy. How the fuck can that happen? It's irrational babble. But instead you're doing this crap. Yeah, you're definitely blocked. YouTube isn't a website or for physics. About or for... What does this have to do with anything, you fuckhead? It's a website covered with videos of experiments, you jackass. Millions of videos on science, fuckface. Alright, lots of them showing experiments, jackass. There's fucking professional MIT lecturers, jackass. So now he's sitting there trying to imply, hey, you can't learn anything on YouTube. You're an asshole. I mean, especially after I've played hundreds of those lectures in my videos. Hundreds of them in my videos. Okay, I guess really good. I'm not even going to read the rest of it. Fuck off. Fuck you. I mean, that's just too stupid an accusation. Oh. I mean, all the Professor Lewin videos I've played. Playing the video means I likely watched it maybe 5-10 times. Alright, so the rest of this is about the thank you. All the people who did comment. So I'll explain the GoDaddy thing. Clearly it's GoDaddy's fault, okay, because it's now fixed, okay, and I clearly did say to the guy, oh, so you're basically telling me that Verizon is blocking my IP, and I said that's kind of ridiculous. Just my IP. Of all the IPs in the universe, mine's the only one blocked going through New York City. And what the clear answer is that the server is a piece of garbage. Okay, and it's and you're well, you know what? I should have really said the truth, which is GoDaddy's blocking me because they're trying to force me to buy some better product, I think. So I think, well, you know what? I can't really say, but we know it's either one of two things. Their server certainly is the problem because if I just make a new account, all of a sudden my website will be viewable again. So if I make a new account, my website's viewable. So clearly it's not my ISP's problem. And the only question is whether they're deliberately degrading my ability to see my own website for the purpose of forcing me to buy some product, some extra product. But that doesn't really make sense because you're saying I'm obviously not going to be very happy with what they've sold me if it doesn't work. So that doesn't make sense either. It's clearly just a shitty server, okay? That's the simple answer. It's really, there's nothing else to say. And they clearly decided to fix it because they said, oh, he caught us. But who knows how long it'll be fixed for. And the other problem is you can't really switch to other companies, because the cloud place or whatever it's called, DreamHost sucks because they're the ones actually serving the videos onto the Do Not Go website, the Do Not God one. So when I can't make videos because I've been censored by the internet, and I have to put them on the actual website, when more than 10 people request the video at the same time, you can't get, the videos won't play because the server won't produce enough. It just won't do it, okay? It won't give me that bandwidth. And so, you have to wait a day or something until the crowd dissipates so you can play the video. I mean, I've had it happen to me, so you can't, I can't play my own videos, and it's like, well, what's the point of having the website if the videos won't play? And they won't, and it just sucks. So as soon as it's a popular video, as soon as somebody finds it interesting, they can't view it. That's the catch. You can only view it when it's uninteresting. Nobody else wants to see it. So, and that sucks. So, I don't know what to do. I mean, I really don't want to be buying a dedicated server and get into expenses and all that kind of crap, but maybe I'll have to think about it. But that's what sucks. I can't just jump to DreamHost and say, fuck GoDaddy, because DreamHost email system sucks too. So it's really just sucks. There isn't some clear choice here where you're going to actually get what they promise you. They just lie. They promise you free bandwidth. I mean, unlimited bandwidth and unlimited this. And they promise you this shit, but they really don't. They don't intend to deliver it. I think that might have the part of what GoDaddy's trying to do is they will force me to make a new account because they want me to re-upload the 56 gigabytes of space I'm using. So they want me to re-upload all of those files, and they're figuring that I won't want to do that. But anyway, so I don't think there's anything in here. So thank you and such to all the kind people who do try to be helpful. There are such people on Earth. There's not nearly enough of them, unfortunately. So anyway, till the next time. This has been a Draft is Science video presentation and such.